Yo, what is going on, everyone? My name is Nick, or the Notorious Fantasy, and in today's video, we're going to be talking about the best fantasy football draft strategy for 2023 fantasy football. Inside of today's video, I'm going to start off by explaining how the draft strategy works, and then we're going to be getting into two different mock drafts where I utilize the draft strategy and show you guys how I would look to approach it if it was a real fantasy football draft for 2023. But before we could get into things, I would like to ask that if you guys are new to the channel and you do end up enjoying today's video, that you please make sure to hit that subscribe button down below. And while you're down there, whether you are new to the channel or not, please make sure that you do leave a like on today's video. It would help me out a ton. If you want to follow me on Twitter, please do so at NotoriousFantasy. So without further ado, let's get into the best fantasy football draft strategy for 2023 fantasy football. The best draft strategy this year, in my opinion, is hero running back. Now, it is also important to note that going into your draft feeling as though you have to do a certain strategy is not necessarily ideal, because if you go into your draft saying, hey, I need to go hero running back, and maybe the draft starts off a different way than you thought, and you actually want to just go ahead and draft two wide receivers off the rip, then that is okay. And if you go into the draft thinking you need to do a certain draft strategy, you are going to put yourself in a box. So again, that is an important disclaimer. Don't go into the draft feeling like you need to draft these certain positions in certain rounds. I just really believe if the draft falls this way, and it a lot of the time does, hero running back is the draft strategy that you want to be utilizing. So hero running back works in a very easy way. In the first two rounds, you are going to draft a running back with one of those picks. So you can draft a running back in round number 1, or you can draft a running back in round number 2. With the other picks, you are going to load up on wide receivers and mix in a quarterback or a tight end. In some cases, the draft might be going so great, maybe some running backs are falling, and you can even draft a quarterback and a tight end mixed in with those wide receivers. This allows for the running back one, the running back that you draft either in the first or second round, to be your hero running back. Then once you fill out the rest of your roster and maybe things are going so swimmingly, you've even filled out a bench spot or two, you are going to want to hammer, Hulk smash the running back position. You might even end up drafting 3, 4, 5 running backs in a row after you already sort out all those wide receivers and potentially that quarterback and that tight end. Utilizing this strategy means that in a lot of scenarios, you are going to be cycling in and out your running back 2 weekly based upon matchup, or maybe if you get lucky, right, you find that fucking golden ticket like your name is Willy Wonka, and you find that RB2 that is that league winner, that late round upside play, and you can just play the same one every week. But we all know that that is very difficult, especially early on in the season. With this strategy, your team will be loaded up at all spots, most likely besides the running back 2. But we all know how fragile the running back position is, and you can even fill this spot. Say your picks don't work out, right? You draft those wide receivers early. Maybe you get a Jalen Hurts, you get one of these cool quarterbacks, you get a nice tight end, and none of those other running back drafts picks that you made ended up working, right? Your running back 1, the Austin Eckler, the Josh Jacobs, they're dominating 50 Shades of Grey style, but the other running back isn't doing too great. You can also look towards the waiver wire. Again, injuries are going to happen. Some great starting running back could potentially get hurt. You pick up the handcuff, and you are looking like a genius. I think this strategy works best in 3 wide receiver or 2 flex leagues. Now, I will note that this strategy also works very well in your normal 1 quarterback, 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers, 1 flex, 1 tight end league. But I do think that the hammering of wide receivers is even more advantageous if, for instance, you could start 4 wide receivers every single week in your roster, that being either 3 wide receivers in a flex or 2 wide receivers and 2 flexes. Now, this strategy also has another strategy that kind of branches off of it, and it is called the double hero running back strategy. basically all you want to do is the exact same thing, but except for drafting just one running back with those first 2 picks, you just want to draft double. 2 running backs in the first 2 rounds, then hammer the wide receivers, get that quarterback, get that tight end, and then start drafting a bunch of running backs later. I think either strategy is great, but personally, based upon how I have seen things go thus far in the offseason, I think the single hero running back is the definitive number 1 draft strategy for 2023 fantasy football. So now we are going to pivot to the first mock draft so I can show you guys how it's done. So if you didn't really pick up too well on the explanation that I gave, or maybe you're a little bit confused, or maybe you just want to see how it actually works, make sure that you buckle in, hit that subscribe button, hit that like button. Let's get into the first mock. Jumping now into the mock draft, we're going to be doing a 12-team PPR mock draft from the 9th overall spot on Fantasy Pros Draft Wizard. The roster positions are 1 quarterback, 2 running backs, 3 wide receivers, a tight end, flex, kicker, defense, and 6 bench spots. The point of these mock drafts is to show off how you would actually do a hero running back draft strategy. I am not going to be going in depth into every single pick that is made inside of this draft. If you want a more in-depth mock draft, just check out one of the mock draft videos. Again, we're focusing on how you want to utilize the hero running back draft strategy. So the draft begins: Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, Christian McCaffrey, Austin Eckler, Tyreek Hill, Saquon Barkley, Bijan Robinson, and Ramondre Stevenson at the 109. This is where I might start considering taking Travis Kelce. I think you can do the hero running back strategy, taking instead of a wide receiver in round 1 or round 2, and then going running back, you could actually take Travis Kelce. I would not mind doing that. We're not going to do that here, but I think that's a perfectly fine strategy. A lot of people are pretty nervous about Jonathan Taylor. In my opinion, I think he's definitely worthy of a first-round pick, and he's going to bounce back, but I'm just going to go with the best wide receiver available. Cooper Kupp, to me, could easily finish as the wide receiver 1B, the most important player in fantasy football. Matthew Stafford appears to be back. This is a solid situation. Cooper Kupp is going to be peppered with targets, and I can get potentially the wide receiver 1 at the 109. He's a guy that I would take with the 4th overall pick, so I am over the moon ecstatic to get him there at that pick. After Cooper Kupp, we see Jonathan Taylor, Travis Kelce, Josh Jacobs, Breece Hall, Stephon Diggs, and Tony Pollard. So we are going to be able to get a solid running back in the 2nd round, and we're going to go with 9-inch Nicholas Chubb. I think Derrick Henry is a fine choice as well, but I think Nick Chubb is just a tier above him. I think that this Browns team is going to look a lot better in 2023 compared to 2022, and there's even some rumors going around that maybe the boy 9-inch Nicholas Chubb is going to be catching more passes this season. So we move to the 3rd round. We got our hero running back. We got the boy 9-inch Nicholas Chubb, and we have Cooper Kupp. This is the perfect start to the draft. Now, no quarterbacks have went off of the board yet through the first 3 rounds. Now, I think in a lot of leagues, the 3rd round is where the big 3 quarterbacks, Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, and Jalen Hurts, are going to come off the board. So if you wanted to take a quarterback here, I definitely would not hate you for doing so, especially if you really liked Mahomes and he fell to the 309, right? Or you really liked Allen or Hurts over the other guys. I view them in a very similar lens. And I'm also fine waiting 2 rounds and potentially getting Lamar Jackson, Joe Burrow, or Justin Fields. So we're to go with a wide receiver here. T. Higgins, Keenan Allen, DK Metcalf, Amari Cooper, Deebo Samuel. I definitely prefer T. Higgins by a wide margin here. So we are going to go with T. Higgins here at the 309. I know he's not necessarily the number 1 wide receiver on his team. On most teams, he would be the number 1 wide receiver, though. T. Higgins is a dominant NFL wide receiver. So after we went ahead and went with T. Higgins, Hawkinson, Mahomes, Allen, Jahmyr Gibbs, DK Metcalf, and Amari Cooper, again, we still have our 1 running back, and we're building out a solid core here. If I'm being honest with you, if we're sitting here in the 4th round and Josh Allen or Jalen Hurts are available, which I think is entirely possible if you are in a more sharp league that waits on the quarterback position, I would be ecstatic to go with either of these guys. So I'm going to go with Jalen Hurts here. He is my quarterback number 1. The rushing upside is just so immense. offense. He is on an offense that is loaded to the gills with talent. And again, I think it is possible for him to fall to the 4th round in some leagues. So right now, we have Jalen Hurts, 9-inch Nicholas Chubb, Cooper Kupp, and T. Higgins. It's nice to see that there was somewhat of a lull after TJ Hawkinson for the next tight ends, because if I'm being honest with you, I view Kittle, Goddard, Pitts, Waller, you kind of just flip a coin to take any fucking one of them. I don't really have that much of a preference if I'm being honest with you. Again, since we are utilizing the strategy, we're going to continue to hammer the wide receiver position. I think there are some running backs here that I would be fine being my running back 2, especially when we are going to be drafting so many of them. Like I said at the start of the video, we are going to be drafting a bunch of running backs in a row. So even if you might not love Isaiah Pacheco, he doesn't have to be in your lineup every week. You can draft Pacheco. Then you can come back and draft A.J. Dillon. Then you can draft Jamal Williams. You can draft Samaje Perine. You can get a bunch of running backs on this team, and all you need is one of them to hit, and you are going to be laughing straight to the bank because, again, you have the star-studded quarterback in Jalen Hurts. You have 9-inch Nicholas Chubb. You have these great wide receivers. I am in love with this strategy, and I'm going to continue to utilize it heavily in fantasy football drafts. So looking here at the wide receiver position, best available, Jerry Jeudy, Tyler Lockett, Christian Watson. I think Christian Watson is immensely underrated right now. I think he has the upside to be one of the top 12 wide receivers in fantasy football. I think Jordan Love is also getting slept on a bit. Now, I'm not saying he's going to finish top 10 in fantasy football, but I think he's a lot better than people give him credit for. Christian Watson is the clear wide receiver 1 on this Packers offense. We saw him have very good games last season. We even saw Jordan Love throw him a nice ball in which Christian Watson scored a touchdown. So again, in the 5th round, I think Christian Watson is kind of close to being a no-brainer. After Watson, DeAndre Hopkins, Rachaad White, Jerry Jeudy, Christian Kirk, Mike Williams, and Tyler Lockett. So this is the point where I think you can consider going with your second running back. So if you wanted to go James Conner here, who I love, go right ahead. I think I am going to draft another wide receiver here, but I will note if this was just a 1 quarterback, 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers, and a flex draft where Christian Watson would be in my flex, I am 100% drafting James Conner in this spot, but that's not how this draft is set up. It's with 3 wide receivers and a flex, so we're going to jump back into the bucket and draft yet another wide receiver. Brandon Ayuk, Mike Evans, Treylon Burks, Jahan Dotson, George Pickens are the best available. I've seen a lot of smoke about how people really like Brandon Ayuk. I'm going to keep it a buck with you. I think if Big Cock Brock Purdy starts, I think Brandon Ayuk could be really good. But Brandon Ayuk and Debo and Kittle and McCaffrey, there's just so many cooks in the kitchen for me to want to feel confident on Brandon Ayuk. But I will note with this strategy, you can be a lot more spicy in the 6th round with your wide receiver selection, right? Normally, you might be drafting your wide receiver 2 potentially in the 6th round, or your wide receiver 3. This is our wide receiver 4, so I'm willing to take more of a deep shot, more of a risky pick. For instance, I think Mike Evans is the safe pick, the cookie cutter pick, right? The guy prints 1,000-yard seasons. I know some people might be a little scared. Oh my God, Nick, they don't have Tom Brady anymore. They have Baker Mayfield and they're going to panic. Well, I'm not panicking one fucking bit. I'm still excited about Mike Evans. But we're going to go with the riskier option. We're going Treylon Burks, the second-year wide receiver. Didn't show too much last year, was banged up, missed some time. I think Treylon Burks is a legitimate wide receiver 1 in the NFL. He is the clear wide receiver 1 on this Titans roster. Try to name another wide receiver on the Titans off the top of your head. You probably cannot do that. I don't think this offense is going to be all that amazing, but if Ryan Tannehill is able to stay healthy, we have seen some positive reports out of camp for Treylon Burks, and I think he could have a huge year. Again, if I wanted to go safe, you definitely could have done that, went with one of these safer wide receivers, but we're going to go a little bit more risky because I'm confident in the other wide receivers that we have on our team. In the 7th round, if James Conner was to have fallen to me, I think that would personally be a no-brainer. I don't think that is super likely if I'm being honest with you, so we're going to pass on James Conner, but I will tell you, if he fell to the 7th round, I'm clicking that pick every single time. We're going to go with Isaiah Pacheco here. Has some solid upside because he's on the Chiefs, one of the best offenses in the NFL, in my opinion, even though their weapon core is not amazing, right? Outside of Travis Kelce. and Pacheco. They don't have a lot of great options, but Patrick Mahomes just puts the team on his back. Darren Sharper, hold my dick. Greg Jennings, if you know what I'm talking about. If you know, you know. Isaiah Pacheco, to me, is a no-brainer here, and we are just going to be hammering the running back position now. We still don't have a tight end, but I'm fine waiting. We are just going to draft potentially 3-4 running backs in a row because we want to make sure that we secure someone that could be an RB2 every single week. Now, Alvin Kamara might miss 6 games, he might miss 8 games, he might miss the whole season, or he might not be suspended at all. In a draft like this, I might be more willing to take that crazy risk. I might be more willing to say, you know what, our running backs, I love Nick Chubb, but Pacheco, you could see a path for him missing, right? You can see a path where he ends up just shitting the bed, and maybe Jerick McKinnon is just a beast again. But I think Alvin Kamara could be worthy in this draft, but the problem is I think he's going to get the 6 to 8 game suspension, and I just don't want to take that risk. I like Javonte Williams a decent amount, but again, there's a lot of news that says he's going to be good to go for week 1, and then I read some other things, and they're like, maybe he's going to play week 1, but he's not going to be a full go until like week 8. It's making me nervous about him, so we're not going to go with him here. We are just going to go with A.J. Dillon. If something was to happen, Aaron Jones, knock on wood, A.J. Dillon would instantly become the running back 1 on an offense that I think is a lot better than most people expect them to be. A.J. Dillon has a touchdown potential to score a zillion touchdowns because he's built like a fucking wrecking ball. So I'm going to take A.J. Dillon here. Definitely a little bit more of a safer pick, but I do think he has significant upside due to the fact that if something was to happen to Aaron Jones, he would instantly become the workhorse on the team. We are back up again here in the 9th round, and we are going to go with, you guessed it, another running back. We are going to go with my boy Khalil Herbert, the pervert. Now, they do have Donta Foreman. They did draft Roquan Johnson, but Khalil Herbert has been a guy that has been uber efficient in the NFL. Last year, he had 5.7 yards per attempt. I think this is a guy that has league-winning upside in the later rounds of fantasy football drafts. The Chicago Bears offense loves to run the ball. This is an offense that's offensive line got better, and I think Khalil Herbert is by far and away the best running back on his team. They're saying it's a reach, but I felt perfectly fine taking him where I did. So we have now went with Pacheco, Dillon, and Khalil Herbert in a row, which is 3 running backs back to back to back. And we are going to go with yet another one because, again, I want to make sure I got that star-studded running back 2 upside, and I can find a wide receiver that's even deep down here that if Watson or Burks ends up just being a flaming pile of dog shit, I can just throw one of these guys in. So here we're going to go with Jamal Williams. This is a guy that I'm going to continue to talk up. We just talked about how Alvin Kamara could potentially be suspended for half of the season, maybe even the whole season. We don't really know. Maybe he won't get suspended at all. But Jamal Williams just scored 7,000 touchdowns on the Detroit Lions, 17 to be exact. I don't expect him to score 17 touchdowns on the Saints, but he is that big bruiser back on the goal line. You know, if they get to the 1-yard line, they're handing the rock to big Jamal with 2 A's Williams. And again, if Kamara misses serious time, Jamal Williams might be the running back 1 on the team for the first 6 games. I like Kendre Miller too, but that in itself just makes him, in my opinion, a must-draft player. So we now have 5 running backs on the team. I'm fine taking a wide receiver at this point, but I do definitely want a tight end in the 11th round. If you say you like Freiermuth, but you're not super comfortable with him, you can even draft another one, but I'm someone, unless I'm stuck in the range where I have to draft like Greg Dulcich as my tight end number 1, then I'm drafting 2 tight ends. But if I'm getting David Njoku or Chiga Konkuwu or David Njoku, Dalton Schultz, Pat Freiermuth, right, I'm just fine taking them as the tight end 1, and that's it. If they end up sucking, obviously, you can just get rid of them. But I don't see a reason to draft 2 tight ends. Definitely not drafting 2 quarterbacks if I have a guy like Jalen Hurts. So we're going to go ahead and go with Pat Freiermuth here. Again, if you like Schultz or Njoku ahead of him, I'm not going to really have too much of an argument with you if I'm being honest. After that, we do got to go ahead and get a wide receiver before things start to really thin out. Looking at the best wide receivers available, Donovan Peoples-Jones, DJ Chark, Hunter Renfrow, Wan'Dale Robinson, Alec Pierce, Rashid Shaheed, Curtis Samuel, Isaiah Hodgins. We've taken Isaiah Hodgins in so many of these drafts, and I'm just going to continue to talk him up. He seems like the wide receiver 1 on the Giants, and you can get him in the 12th round, the 13th round, the 14th round in some drafts. To me, you don't want to be doing mental gymnastics in the late rounds, right? I get why you want to take those crazy deep shots from fucking Stephen Curry range, but sometimes there's even potential layups in the 13th round, and with how Jalen Hyatt has performed in camp so far, where they're talking about he's playing with the third team, don't overthink Isaiah Hodgins. Again, the kicker and the defense, we wait until the last 2 rounds to take them. Here we are going to go with a wide receiver and then a running back, or a running back and then a wide receiver. I like Rashad Penny, but I'm going to be honest with you, Kenneth Gainwell is pretty sneaky good. It seems like the team really likes Gainwell, and we know Penny isn't necessarily the definition of health. I'm fine just grabbing a piece of this Eagles offense super late. Obviously, this is a shot in the dark that Gainwell moves up in the offense, but if something happens to Swift, and Penny, again, not the safest player on earth, like Kenny Gainwell has a real shot to be a league winner that you can find in the 14th round. Again, I'm not saying he's a lock to be a league winner, but I think he has that upside. And then we're going to go with a wide receiver here. We're going to go with DJ Chark, baby Chark, the potential wide receiver 1 on the Carolina Panthers with brand new quarterback Bryce Young starting there. Again, sometimes it doesn't have to be super complicated in the late rounds. You can find the number 1 receiver on the Giants and the Panthers potentially in the 13th or the 12th and the 14th round. So don't overthink things. And then we're going to go kicker and defense. Since this video doesn't have anything to do with kickers and defenses, we're just going to take whoever the best available is. So we're going to go with Justin Tucker, the fucker here. And then for defense, you want to draft the defense that is playing up against the worst opponent in week number 1, the Saints. They're playing against the Titans. Let's be honest, that's a pretty good matchup for the great Saints defense. So now we are going to move. We get an A- on here to recap the team. Hurts, Chubb, Pacheco, Cooper Kupp, T. Higgins, Christian Watson, Pat Freiermuth, Treylon Burks, Saints, Tucker, A.J. Dillon, Khalil Herbert, Jamal Williams, Isaiah Hodgins, Kenny Gainwell, and DJ Chark. This is an amazing team. This is the perfect utilization of your running back, and we're going to run it back one more time, and this time we are going to be doing it in a league where it's just a regular 1 quarterback, 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers, a tight end, flex, kicker defense, and 6 bench spots. All right, so we are over on Sleeper here, doing a little bit different from Fantasy Pros. This is going to be, again, 1 quarterback, 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers, tight end, flex, kicker defense, and 6 bench spots. As well, we are going from the 1.03, and this is a half PPR mock draft instead of full PPR. The draft begins with Justin Jefferson, followed by Austin Eckler. I think normally the 101 is going to be Jefferson. Then, most of the time, you're going to see Jamar Chase. This time we see Eckler, so we're going to go with Christian McCaffrey here. We're going to go with our running back in the first round. Get that hero running back, and then start spamming the wide receivers. Maybe get a quarterback or a tight end. Very normal start to the first round, in my opinion. Again, if you are at the end of the draft, or at the end of the first round, I am perfectly excited, perfectly fine, perfectly happy drafting Travis Kelce there. 2 quarterbacks go inside the second round. I am not willing to do that if I'm being honest with you. The third round's the earliest. I'm going with the quarterback here. We're going to go with the best wide receiver available, in my opinion. That is my boy, Jalen Waddle away. Waddle to the very next day. So all 3 of the big quarterbacks go in the second round. So in this draft, we're not going to be drafting a quarterback super early. I noticed Fantasy Pros does not have the quarterbacks ranked as highly as Sleeper does, which I think makes a little bit more sense, but I digress here. So again, I think it's fine if, you're not utilizing the hero running back strategy. If you wanted to go with Ramondre Stevenson here, that would be amazing, but we're sticking to our guns here. This is a hero wide receiver video. We're going to go with another wide receiver here, and we're going to go with Chris Olave. I do have Devontae Smith ranked ahead of him, but I have talked about this a bunch on the channel. If you do a bunch of drafts, you want to diversify your teams. Nick Ercolano of bdge talks about this a ton. You don't want to just do 10 drafts and in the third round draft Devontae Smith 9 out of 10 times, right? If you like Devontae Smith, draft him 4 times, 5 times even, and then draft other wide receivers or running backs, tight ends at the other times, right? So even though I like Smith more, I'm going to get Chris Olave because I do genuinely understand the upside with him. And again, since this is just a 2 wide receiver and a flex draft, I am more likely to cut the hero running back strategy shorter, kind of get that running back to earlier compared to how I would if there was another flex spot or another wide receiver spot. A bunch of tight ends off the board, which makes things kind of gross. I'm not drafting Pitts or Goddard or Waller in the 4th fucking round. I think that is a little bit crazy. I am open to drafting Justin Fields here, but I think we're going to take the chance here since team number 2 already has Jalen Hurts. We only have one guy to go through and hope that they don't draft a quarterback here. If they do, it is what it is, if I'm being honest with you. So we are going to go with best wide receiver available, which is, in my opinion, DeAndre Hopkins. He is not on a team yet, but regardless of which team he lands on, I think his ADP is going to go higher than a 4th round pick, if I'm just being honest with you guys. Like, even if he ends up on the Tennessee Titans, that would suck for my Treylon Burks pick that I made in the last mock draft, but I do think that DeAndre Hopkins would probably move potentially even into the early 4th or the middle of the 3rd round, regardless of what team he's on. So after D-Hop, Drake London, Damian Pierce, Terry McLaurin, and J.K. Dobbins. So perfect. We are a wizard, Harry Potter. We predicted perfectly there by looking at the draft board. A very important tip in just drafting in general. So we didn't have to reach on Justin Fields. We get him falling in the 5th. I don't think we would have gotten Hopkins in the 5th. So I'm very excited that I made that decision again. I am just such a genius. So things are coming back our way here. We have all of the wide receiver spots filled out. We have our quarterback, we have that hero running back, and we have our flex. So in the 6th round, I like Darren Waller, but if I'm being honest with you, I'm fine just waiting late in drafts on tight end. So I'm just going to go with ending the hero running back strategy here and now start spamming the running back position. Cam Akers, Pacheco, Montgomery. I like Cam Akers the most out of this group. In a way, I think Cam Akers' upside might be higher. I think I definitely do have Pacheco ranked higher, but I'm starting to really turn the page, turn the leaf on Cam Akers. So I'm going to go with Cam Akers this time. The clear running back one in LA. I mean, his competition is absolute dog shit, 2-ply, soft as baby shit running backs behind him. I talked about him in yesterday's video as a guy that I really think could be a league winner this year. Darren Waller sadly goes, so we're not going to go tight end here. I think reaching on Evan Ingram or Freiermuth or something in the 7th round is just a little bit egregious. So we're going to be able to get Pacheco on both of these teams, which I am pretty excited about. I am questioning if we want to double tap or triple tap here another running back in the 8th round, or if you want to dive back into the wide receiver well. That is definitely up in the air here because I do feel a little bit more comfortable with Cam Akers than most people. But again, would I say that my confidence is at a 10? Obviously not. So we are going to go ahead and go with, again, the tight ends here. I do actually kind of like Evan Ingram more than most people, but I think I'd rather wait and just go back in and draft another running back here. We're going to go with Zach Charbonnet because I think he is probably the most risky play available with that upside to take over as the running back one on his team. If he doesn't do that, we're going to look back and be like, wow, Nick, what an awful 8th round pick. But I do think that is possible. And then we are going to dive back into the wide receiver well, because again, I'm not as optimistic on Chris Olave as a lot of people. And obviously D-Hop still isn't on a team. So we're going to go best wide receiver available here. I am not someone who typically likes drafting Gabe Davis, but I think I'm willing to take the shot on him here. He failed me in a brutal way last year. He was awful. Downright tremendous. Tremendously bad. Downright terrible is what I meant to say. The guy fucking sucked asshole for free. It was bad. I think he could bounce back, though. The Bills just have nothing outside of Stephon Diggs. Like, they don't have a clear number 2 receiver, and maybe things just go Gabe Davis's way. Maybe Josh Allen doesn't get hurt, and maybe Josh Allen stays more consistent, and Gabe Davis smashes. Look, like, again, I don't think Gabe Davis is a great pick in the 9th round, but I'm going to be honest, when you draft wide receivers with as high draft capital as your top 3 wide receivers were drafted in rounds 2, 3, and 4, I think you are more likely you can afford to draft a guy that's as risky as Gabe Davis. So looking back here at running back, things get brutal on Sleeper in the 10th round. Things start getting real gross. I'm not drafting my handcuff in Jerick McKinnon here. I think Elijah Mitchell makes sense, but he's also a handcuff, so we're just going to wait until the next round, and we're going to draft our tight end here. I'm a big fan of Chig. I think Chig is pretty clearly the number 2 target on this Tennessee Titans offense behind Treylon Burks. We saw some spike games out of Chig last year, and I think if Tannehill is able to stay healthy, this will just be a much more consistent offense in Tennessee. Are you the only Tan that I see? Back on to the running back position here. We are going to go with Kendre Miller. Again, we talked about Jamal Williams. Kendre Miller has that same upside to take over as the number 1 in New Orleans early on in the season. Kendre Miller actually pretty similar to Alvin Kamara in terms of skill set. The thing is, though, it's the beginning of the year. Kendre Miller's a rookie. Jamal Williams is a veteran. The man scored 17 fucking touchdowns last year, so I definitely think it's more likely that Williams gets more work early on, especially since Kendre Miller hasn't been at the OTAs, the camps, because he has been banged up, which obviously sucks, but hey, nothing you can do about that. And then we'll draft one more wide receiver here. I feel pretty comfortable with the running backs that we drafted. If you want to draft another running back, Tank Bigsby would be my shot there to potentially take over for Travis Etienne. Again, we're going strictly off of upside here. We could get Rashee Rice, who might be the wide receiver 1 in Kansas City. I like Rondell Moore a lot more, but we're going to go for the more upside shot here and draft Rashee Rice. I mean, the Chiefs wide receiver core, once they got rid of Tyreek Hill, like, they don't really have a wide receiver 1. Juju really wasn't that guy last year. So we're going to go with kicker first. We're going to go with Harrison Butker, the fucker of the Kansas City Chiefs. My old bitch lame, but my young Hoku also goes in the 3rd round. And then we're going to draft a tight end. I hate that Sleeper doesn't show you the schedule of the teams on here just yet, unless this is the schedule. No, it's not, because this is how they performed last year, so that kind of sucks. But we're going to go ahead and just go with the Saints again, because, again, they're playing the Tennessee Titans. So our team here, again, utilizing the hero running back draft strategy, Justin Fields, Christian McCaffrey, Cam Akers. Wide receivers are Jalen Waddle and Chris Olave. Chig is our tight end. Our flex is DeAndre Hopkins. Our kicker is Butker. Our defense is the Saints. And then Pacheco, Charbonnet, Davis, Kendre Miller, and Rashee Rice. Let me know down below in the comment section what you guys think about this draft strategy. Do you love it? Do you hate it? Is this the draft strategy you are going to be using in your 2023 fantasy football drafts? Let me know down below. I love you guys all so much. Hope you have a great rest of your guys' day. And as always, good boy!